The smoke from the battlefield still twisted into the blood-red skies when Commander Zethus stepped forward, his polished boots crunching over the shattered remains of human starships. All around him, the victorious roars of the Dravak soldiers echoed off the blackened cliffs. Banners were raised, weapons were lifted. Songs of conquest filled the air. It was over. The humans had been crushed beneath the might of the Dravak Dominion, or so it seemed. "Signal the High Command," Zethus barked, his four jaws curling into a smile. "Tell them Terra's forces have fallen." Officers rushed to obey. Photographs were taken. Chunks of human wreckage were paraded through the camps like trophies. The news feeds across 100 alien worlds would broadcast this day as a reminder. The primitive upstarts from Earth were nothing before true galactic power. Yet amid the celebration, a sour note lingered, subtle, almost imperceptible. Zethus first noticed it as he passed a twisted hulk of a human carrier. Something was wrong. The ship looked too small. The armor plating was thinner than standard war-class specifications. The turrets were outdated, some practically welded onto the hull like afterthoughts. A frown twitched across his features. No matter. Victory was victory. Still, the frown deepened as he moved through the wreckage field. Where were the heavy mechs, the orbital artillery systems, the human dreadnoughts that intelligence reports had screamed about for months? It was then that Sub-Commander Vek approached, his three crimson eyes wide with uncertainty. He saluted, sharply. "Commander Zethus," Vek said, lowering his voice. "Our analysts are requesting your presence. They've found something." Zethus narrowed his eyes. "Show me." They descended into the central wreck analysis tent, a structure hastily erected atop a hill of charred debris. Inside, a group of Dravak scientists and battlefield technicians stood huddled over glowing holotables. Charts, energy readings, and structural scans floated in the air. "Report!" Zethus demanded. The chief analyst, a wiry creature with trembling tendrils, cleared his throat. "Commander, initial assessments indicated we destroyed a sizable human force. However," he paused, his voice faltering, "there's a discrepancy." "Spit it out." The analyst swallowed hard. "There were only 217 humans present." Silence slammed into the tent like a hammer. Zethus stared at him. "What?" 217, the analyst repeated. "Not thousands, not battalions, a mere scouting unit, sir." Murmurs spread among the officers. Some cursed under their breath. Others looked at each other in disbelief. Zethus's jaw twitched. "That's impossible. Our forces engaged in heavy conflict for hours. We lost entire regiments." The analyst, growing more pale by the second, nodded. "Yes, Commander. That's the alarming part. A small, highly mobile human scout team inflicted casualties at a scale far exceeding their numbers. They used guerrilla tactics, sabotage, precision strikes. We fought shadows." Zethus turned away, pacing, rage boiling under his calm exterior. He had watched hundreds of brave Dravak soldiers die. He had personally led charges against fortified positions. He had seen human weapons tear through their tanks, breach their walkers, collapse their lines. And now he was being told that all of it, had been the work of less than 3 companies of scouts? He slammed his fist against a metal support beam, sending a loud clang through the tent. "They baited us," he muttered under his breath. "They made us think we were facing an army." Behind him, the scientist continued in a shaking voice. "Commander, there's more. Their equipment was incomplete, field-modified. Their ships were retrofitted cargo haulers, not military class at all. Sir, this wasn't even their main force." Zethus felt the blood drain from his face. Not their main force? Then where was it? A cold realization began to crawl up his spine like an icy parasite. He spun on his heel. "Get me all sensor records from the last 72 hours. I want movement patterns, fleet positioning, anything. Now. Vec hesitated. Commander, do you believe the main human fleet is— I don't believe anything anymore, Zethus snapped. I know one thing. If what we fought was only their scouts— He turned toward the blackened sky where distant stars shimmered like 1,000 watching eyes. And then the real war hasn't even begun. Far above, beyond the reach of their battered sensors, shadowy formations began to shift in the void, moving with quiet, terrifying purpose. The humans were coming, and this time, they wouldn't be sending scouts. The war room was a hive of desperate movement. Commanders barked orders into fractured comms channels. Analysts scrambled between terminals, pulling up telemetry data, battlefield logs, anything that could explain the impossible truth hanging like smoke in the air. Commander Zethus stood at the center, motionless. His fists were clenched behind his back, claws digging into his own palms. On the hollow map before him, the battlefield flickered, a broken landscape marked by thousands of tiny red dots, each representing a Dravak casualty. The blue dots representing— humans were few. Far too few. Vec approached, a stack of data slates in his arms, his movements hurried but careful. He laid them out on the command table, the holographic overlays lighting up. Commander, Vec said grimly, we have compiled the full casualty breakdown. Zethus barely nodded. Vec gestured at the map. Initial estimates assumed human forces numbered between 6,000 to 8,000. Current data confirms 217. A low hiss of disbelief spread through the gathered officers. We lost over 12,000 soldiers, Vec continued, voice tightening. Entire armored divisions, air support wings, even orbital detachments, and it wasn't due to human numbers. It was tactics. Zethus leaned closer, scanning the battle. Logs. There, flashing red and green across the map, he saw it. A pattern. Pinpoint strikes. Sabotage teams hitting ammo depots. Explosives planted in communication relays. Sniper fire coordinated with drone swarms that jammed sensors. Stealth insertions that crippled heavy mechs from inside. They had never faced a wall of human soldiers. They had fought ghosts. Show me their entry point, Zethus ordered. Vec tapped a control. A new visual unfolded. A grainy recording from orbital surveillance. A battered human dropship coasted into the atmosphere, barely registering on threat sensors. It wasn't even a warship. It was a repurposed mining freighter, crudely armored, and bristling with makeshift cannons. From its belly, sleek, dark figures poured out. Fast, coordinated, ruthless, human scouts. They moved through the battlefield like wolves among sheep. Silent, precise, efficient. One team sabotaged an entire artillery battery, leaving only melting wreckage behind. Another team sliced through supply lines, leaving Dravak soldiers stranded, starving, demoralized. Each strike wasn't random. It was surgical, chosen to maximize panic, chaos, and collapse. Zethus exhaled slowly, a chill crawling under his scales. We didn't defeat an army, he said under his breath. We survived a test. An alarm blared across the command deck, drawing everyone's attention. A new feed flashed open. Intercepted human communication logs recovered from the wreckage. A voice crackled through the speakers, distorted but clear. Human, calm, cold. Scout Unit Aegis reporting. Primary objective complete. Evaluation successful. Hostile forces deemed strategically primitive. Recommend advancement to Stage 2. Silence strangled the room. The humans had been assessing them, playing with them. Vec looked visibly shaken. Commander, if this was only a scouting force, what will Stage 2 be? Zethus didn't answer immediately. He stared at the map, watching the slow blinking lights of his fleet regrouping across the planet. And for the first time in decades, Real, soul-deep fear bloomed in his chest. "Recall all patrols," he said tightly. "Issue full system-wide scans. Prepare every battle group for immediate redeployment." "But, Commander," one junior officer protested, "our fleets are exhausted. We can't—" "Do it!" Zythus roared, slamming his fist into the table hard enough to crack the metal frame. "They are coming. We've seen nothing yet." As the officer scrambled away, Vec stepped closer, voice lowered. "There's more," he said grimly. "We detected strange energy patterns in the outer orbit hours before the scout force landed. We assumed it was debris fields." Zethus's eyes narrowed. "And?" Vec hesitated. "Reanalysis shows displacement waves, cloaked mass movements, large scale." The command deck froze. They weren't just facing scouts. There was a fleet out there, hidden, waiting. Bythus turned his gaze to the stars beyond the reinforced windows. 1,000 tiny lights blinked back at him. Watching, waiting. He knew then that this was never a war they were meant to win. It wasn't even a war yet. The scouts had merely lit the match. The real fire was still coming. "Pray," Zithus said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "Pray whatever gods you believe in, because humans—" He let the words trail off. There was no salvation coming, only the cold, inevitable march of humanity, and they weren't even running yet. They never saw them coming. The first sign of the human scout unit's presence wasn't the thunder of cannons or the flash of heavy bombardment. It was silence. Communication blackouts, fleets falling mysteriously out of contact, supply convoys, vanishing without a trace. At first, the Dravak command believed it was a sensor malfunction, perhaps atmospheric interference or a natural electromagnetic storm. They sent patrols to investigate. None returned. From orbit, scattered thermal, signatures were detected, small, fleeting, vanishing as quickly as they appeared. Recon drones reported distorted visual feeds, strange shadows flickering at the edge of perception before they too were lost. It was only days later, when a battered reconnaissance craft limped back to base with a single partial recording, that the truth began to surface. Humans. Not thousands, not even hundreds together, but cells. Teams of 5, 10, 20 at most, moving like whispers through the shattered ruins. They operated without large weapons platforms. No tanks, no mobile artillery. Instead, they brought chaos. In one fragment of footage, a Dravak fuel depot, protected by triple-layered security grids and elite guards, exploded into a pillar of fire after a lone human operative crawled through sewage tunnels and planted precise microcharges on the core pipes. There were no alarms, no warning shots. One minute the depot stood proud, the next it was a burning crater. In another recording, a Dravak command post went dark within minutes of a scheduled systems check. Investigators later discovered that someone, or something, had spliced into the security feeds, looping false images while human infiltrators silently eliminated the officers one by one. Each hit was a message. Every explosion, every ambush, every vanishing unit whispered the same chilling truth. "We see you. We know you. We are already inside." Commander Zethus watched the playback in grim silence. He stood alongside his war council, eyes fixed on the holographic recreations of each human strike. "They anticipated every defensive measure," Vec muttered, voice thick with dread. "They adapted faster than we could respond. It was as if they were toying with us." "They were studying us," Zethus corrected, jaw tight. "Testing our strengths, measuring our weaknesses, cataloging every failure." He gestured at the display. A human squad could be seen sabotaging a Dravak gunship, not by frontal assault, but by hacking its maintenance droids to reverse critical systems. The ship imploded mid-liftoff. No massive armies, no grand sieges, just surgical strikes, psychological warfare, and everywhere the same eerie pattern. No human casualties left behind. No prisoners. No warning. Only ghostly remnants. A damaged relay here, a shattered power grid there. And the silent certainty that someone, somewhere, had just pulled another thread loose from the Dravak war machine. The most disturbing transmission came last. Recovered from a charred helmet recorder found at the ruins of an outpost, the message wasn't meant for the Dravak. It was a report, a human field report, calm and cold. The hologram flickered, showing a human scout, armor darkened, visor gleaming like a shard of black ice, standing over a field of dead Dravak soldiers. He spoke with clinical detachment. Unit Aegis, Mission Log 045, observation complete. Dravak defense systems, suboptimal. Response protocols, predictable. Morale, critically fragile under sustained disruption. Recommended action, proceed to Stage 2. Conclusion, hostile species. Unsuited for long-term conflict. Full-scale neutralization advised. The recording ended with the human scout turning away, boots crunching over alien corpses, vanishing into smoke. Silence held the room. Vec broke it with a choked whisper. Stage 2. What is Stage 2? Zythus already knew. It wasn't defense. It wasn't deterrence. It was annihilation. The humans hadn't come to negotiate. They hadn't come to fight honorably, army against army. They had come to evaluate the enemy. And now, having measured the Dravak's worth, they had rendered judgment. The scouts weren't warriors. They were auditors. And the Dravak had failed the audit. In the cold void above, the real threat stirred. Hidden fleets aligning, engines humming in the darkness. And somewhere among the stars, a single human transmission broadcasted in a frequency so low it seeped into the very bones of every listening station. Phase 1, complete. The message ended with two final words that froze the blood of every Dravak officer who heard them. Prepare yourselves. The humans had played their opening move. The next would not be quiet. It would be final. The High Command convened in an emergency session, deep within the armored citadel of Dravak Prime. Outside, the skies flickered with the frantic glow of mass mobilization. Fleets roared into low orbit, refueling stations overloaded. Military draft announcements blared from every holoscreen. Civilians flooded the spaceports, desperate to escape the core worlds. Across the Dominion, a single silent truth had taken root. The humans were coming, and nothing could stop them. Inside the war chamber, holograms buzzed with reports of escalating chaos. Entire colonies reported sensor ghosts. Strange distortions in deep space, fleets glimpsed for a heartbeat before vanishing. Food production. Centers collapsed under sudden cyber attacks. Communications relays burned out without warning. It wasn't an invasion yet. It was preparation. The humans were sowing panic like farmers sowing seeds, knowing the harvest would be terror. Commander Zythus stood at the center of the room, face carved in stone, as political envoys, admirals, and high counselors shouted over each other. "We must sue for peace," one counselor barked. "Prepare the home fleets, fortify," another screamed. "They'll exterminate us all," a third cried, face pale. Zythus slammed his fist into the council table, cracking it. Down the middle, the room fell into shocked silence. "They're not here for negotiations," Zythus growled, voice like a blade scraping stone. "They offered no demands, no ultimatums. They are coming to end us." A grim-faced admiral stepped forward. "Commander, we have sighted movement near the Helion belt. Unmarked vessels, cloaked signatures, mass displacements." Zythus's eyes narrowed. "Humans," the admiral nodded stiffly. The fleet that had remained hidden during the scout attack was now moving, still cloaked, still silent, but no longer idle. They were aligning, preparing. "They're staging," Zythus whispered. Stage 2. Far from. Dravak Prime in the black oceans of deep space, unseen by any alien eye, The human mega-fleets drifted, monstrous constructs of steel and purpose. Battle barges the size of moons. Cloaked carriers whispering through the dark like silent predators. Their weapon systems remained cold, engines idle, conserving every particle of energy for the strike to come. In the heart of the lead dreadnought, a single communication officer keyed in a transmission, a ghost signal, designed not to hide, but to be found by alien scanners. A warning. Back on Dravac Prime, the intercept team picked up the transmission almost immediately. They decrypted it within minutes. The message was chillingly simple. Stage 2 begins, pray. The intercept officer dropped the slate, hands trembling. Across the Dominion, panic exploded like wildfire. Entire sectors declared martial law. Supply lines collapsed under the pressure of mass civilian evacuations. Planetary governors begged the high command for reinforcements that didn't exist. Black market prices for off-world passage soared beyond reason. Even in their desperation, the Dravac understood the cruel genius of it all. Humans hadn't fired a single shot, and yet the Dominion was already tearing itself apart. Inside the war. Chamber, Vex spoke up, voice hoarse. Commander, our allies, they're abandoning us. The Zelvori delegation withdrew from our defense pact this morning. The Krath Consortium has declared neutrality. The Uricans refuse to answer our calls. Zithis closed his eyes briefly. Of course they would. No sane species would stand against humanity now. The scout unit had shown them everything they needed to know. Not just the Dravac's weakness, but the humans' terrifying efficiency. This wasn't war. It was culling. The humans had chosen their prey, and they intended to finish it cleanly. Meanwhile, deep in the void, the human fleets slowly began to pivot. No fanfare, no lights. No warnings. Their vector shifted toward the heart of the Dravac Dominion, toward Dravac Prime itself. In perfect silence, the extermination fleet advanced. Back in the war chamber, one final desperate plan was proposed: the Oblivion Protocol. Massively detonate entire outer sectors, rendering them uninhabitable, to create a barrier between humanity and Dravac Prime. Yithis listened to the details without a word. The destruction of billions of their own citizens. A last act of cowardice, masquerading as strategy. He shook his head. No, he said quietly. It won't matter. The humans would not be deterred by fire or by emptiness. They would move through the ashes without slowing. The Dominion was already lost. The only question remaining was how much blood would be spilled before the final surrender. Ithis turned toward the vast starscape window once more, his voice almost a whisper. Stage 2 has begun, and far beyond the rim of the known galaxy, the first human warships lit their engines. The storm was coming, and there would be no survivors. The first world vanished without a sound. One moment it spun lazily around its sun, home to 12 billion Dravac citizens, their cities gleaming under violet skies. The next it was gone. No explosion, no energy surge detectable. Just silence. On the Dominion's central command relays, the planet's signature blinked out like a dead star. Panic ignited across the Dominion's channels. "Sensor glitch!" one technician screamed. "Recalibrate scanners!" another barked. But deep down, everyone already knew. It wasn't an error. It was a message. High above the Dravac core sectors, human dreadnoughts materialized from the darkness. Engines silent, weapons already primed. There was no broadcast, no demand for surrender. The humans simply moved. In synchronized silence, the megafleet unleashed its first wave. Planetary defense satellites vaporized instantly, snuffed out by pinpoint railgun strikes from beyond visual range. Orbital stations burst apart like paper beneath invisible kinetic bombardments. Fighter wings scrambled in desperation, only to vanish in swarms of self-guided micro-missiles, too fast to dodge, too smart to miss. Entire fleets burned before. Their admirals could even issue orders. Commander Zethus watched the horror unfold on the main holotable. Red icons, representing planetary defense groups, winked out one by one like dying embers in a collapsing fire. "Mobilize!" he roared. "All fleets to defensive formations! Priority on protecting core worlds!" Admirals barked acknowledgments. But their voices were hollow, broken. There was no defense formation against ghosts. Every time Dravak ships moved, the humans shifted faster. Every attempt to form battle lines collapsed under coordinated surgical strikes. Their tactical simulations, based on centuries of warfare, were useless. Humans didn't fight by conventional logic. They fought like predators, overwhelming, relentless, efficient. And they didn't just destroy ships. They destroyed infrastructure, communication hubs, food reserves, medical outposts, without firing. Unnecessary shots, they turned the Dominion's strength into a crumbling, starving husk. On the refugee world of Vethka Prime, civilians crowded evacuation ports, desperate to flee. Orbiting above, Dravak patrol ships deployed defensive nets, confident in their superior numbers. Then the humans came, without warning, without mercy. Stealthed kinetic rods, each no bigger than a transport capsule, dropped from high orbit at near relativistic speeds. The atmosphere screamed. The first impact obliterated Vethka's spaceport in a plume of molten rock and fire. The second cracked open the planetary shield generators like eggshells. The third ended any thought of organized resistance. There were no survivors. The last image transmitted before blackout was a single shadow blotting out the sun, a human dreadnought moving into low orbit, its surface glinting like a black knife. In the bleeding sky, across the Dominion, desperate calls for ceasefires echoed into the void. They were met with silence. Humanity wasn't negotiating. Humanity was executing. In the war chamber, Vec stumbled forward, eyes wild. "Commander," he gasped, "the outer colonies, they're gone. Entire sectors, erased." Zethus's claws dug into the command table. He knew. He had known from the moment the scout report ended. This wasn't retaliation. It wasn't conquest. It was a purge. Humans had concluded the Dravak were unworthy to stand among the stars, and now, methodically, without hesitation, they were erasing them, not out of hatred, out of cold, strategic necessity. A final transmission crackled across Dravak Prime's main communication array. It was not encoded. It was not hidden. It played in every chamber, every station, every warship. A human voice, calm, detached, utterly emotionless, spoke. "This is not war. This is not vengeance. This is removal. You were measured. You were found lacking. This is mercy." The transmission ended, and the stars began to fall. Thousands of human strike groups previously hidden in the void now revealed themselves. Each formation targeted a vital node, energy grids, command centers, supply routes. Dravak Prime itself was now under direct approach. Human ships moved like wraiths, uncatchable, undeniable, inevitable. No defensive weaponry could lock onto them. No escape routes remained open. The Dravak Dominion, rulers of 200 star systems, was being dismantled not by rage, but by indifference. The humans weren't even angry. They were simply efficient. And efficiency was death. Commander Zethus gripped the edge of the command table, staring into the endless streams of red warnings and casualty reports flooding the hollow screens. In his heart, he knew the truth. The Dravak weren't at war. They were being erased, and there was nothing left to stop it, nothing left to save. The final order formed on his lips, not of resistance, but of survival. But even as he opened his mouth to speak, the first human ships breached the upper atmosphere of Dravak Prime, and the sky, once proud and unchallenged, turned black. Dravak Prime fell without a scream. The great planetary shields, once thought impenetrable, shimmered briefly against the approaching human dreadnoughts, then collapsed, crumbling like mist before a storm. Human strike teams landed, methodically, wave after wave, moving through the deserted cities like surgeons through a corpse. No mass bombings, no wanton slaughter, only precision. Targeted infrastructure strikes severed communications, power grids, food supplies. Government complexes found their doors breached by small, silent human units. Administrators, generals, and ministers were extracted or eliminated. Without fanfare, their seats of power reduced to cold, empty shells. No grand battles. No desperate final stands. Just silence. A cold, unstoppable tide that swept the Dominion from the stars. Commander Zethus stood atop the ruins of the Central Command Tower, his armor battered, one eye swollen shut. He had ordered the final defensive. Lines hours ago. They had evaporated under surgical precision. Now he watched as human banners, black with silver markings, were raised over the remains of the Dravak capital. There was no shouting, no celebration. Only the methodical continuation of a campaign already decided. The humans moved through the ruins with the quiet efficiency of engineers dismantling a failed project. Zethus swayed slightly where he stood, a broken figure clutching the tattered remains of a once proud flag. Beside him, Vec, battered, limping, stared hollow-eyed at the occupying forces. "They don't even hate us," he rasped. Zethus said nothing. He knew. This wasn't vengeance, it wasn't rage. It was inevitability. The humans hadn't come because they hated the Dravak. They had come because they had judged them unfit to survive, a failed system, an unstable node in the galactic equation, something to be removed, quietly, efficiently, before it infected the larger whole. The final terms of surrender were transmitted via a small human envoy, a single figure clad in black, helmeted, face unseen. The document was simple. Immediate and unconditional cessation of all hostilities. Full disarmament of remaining Dravak forces. Permanent oversight by human-appointed administrators. No negotiations. No appeals. This signed without reading the full text. What choice did he have? Their world was no longer theirs. Their future had already been rewritten, and humanity, having decided their fate, would waste no time executing it. Later, in the shattered remnants of his private quarters, Zethus sat before a simple recording device, a relic from an older, less violent age. He activated it, the blue light blinking to life. His voice, rough and low, filled the room. Final log. To whomever finds this, know that we were not defeated by hatred, nor by superior numbers. He paused, breathing ragged. We were defeated by something far colder. We were measured. We were found wanting. A long silence stretched, heavy and endless. He looked toward the window, where human patrols moved in quiet formations across the ruined skyline. When the humans came, we thought they would rage against us, that they would wage war as we understood it. He shook his head. But they did not rage. They did not scream. They did not boast. They simply removed us. He leaned back, closing his eyes. We fought their scouts. We thought we had won. But the scouts were never meant to win. They were meant to measure. He opened his eyes once, more, filled with the hollow realization that came too late. And when they finished measuring, they acted. A heavy breath. Against humanity, horror is mercy. He ended the recording. No one would come to listen. No one would come to save them. The humans were already rebuilding, not for the Dravak, but for themselves. The age of the Dominion was over. The age of humanity had begun. In the void above, Dravak Prime. The human fleets hovered, silent, patient, immutable. No demands were broadcast, no declarations made. The war was over, not with a scream, but with the quiet efficiency of a species that no longer considered the Dravak worth speaking. Till they had been evaluated. They had been judged, and now, like dust swept from a forgotten corner of history, they were gone.